I saw it as a celestial event, and the Aurora Borealis is a celestial event. I like the sound of it and the celestial significance. First of all, let's go into 7. Al Shepard started that with Freedom 7. And the press caught that and said, isn't that nice of Al to name his capsule something 7 in honor of the 7 astronauts, his buddies. And everybody believed that. The fact of that matter is that he named it 7 because it was capsule number 7 off the line. But the people didn't know that. But since everybody wanted to match Al's largesse, Gus had Liberty Bell 7 and John had Friendship 7. So I had to do something with 7, and it was Aurora 7. But the people back home in Boulder, down on the Front Range, thought, wasn't that nice of Scott to name his capsule Aurora 7 for the fact that he was born and raised in a house in Boulder on the corner of Aurora and 7th Street. So I give you the real reason behind Aurora, but people from Boulder don't believe it.
Did you run into any problems in flight, or was it a nominal flight up till the bitter end?
Oh boy, sure. There were problems in all of those flights. I had one that's most famous for overshooting by 250 yards, 250 miles. I had the record for overshooting the target for a long time until some cosmonauts came along some years later and missed theirs by 1,500 miles. But there was an overshoot that caused a lot of dismay in the control center. And it was, if you talk to Chris Kraft about that, failure of the man. If you talk to me about it, it's a failure of the machine. Where the truth is, I don't know, but
you'll never have a better opportunity to express your point of view than right now, Scott. Why don't you grab it and run with it? Right after that phone call.
Yeah, okay.
Now we're ready to pick it up again, and we had just reached that point where you said Chris Kraft and some of his controllers were not happy, and I had said, Scott, you'll never have a better time than right now to tell your side of that story.
Yeah, well, part of that difficulty came from mismanagement of my fuel system, which caused great concern on the ground because I was ahead of my fuel consumption line. That was not good, and I didn't like that any better than anybody else. However, there were other failures that exacerbated the effect of low fuel. And when you get right down to the other problem with the flight, which directly caused the overshoot, there were 3 failures that were all additive. First of all, the retro rockets were slightly under thrust. That may be a minimal influence on the overshoot. They were late because of an attitude instrument failure, which really had not been discovered. I didn't, there was no yaw check in the flight plan. Maybe there should have been, but we didn't expect that. And remember, we're learning. Anyway, the yaw indicator was bad. I think all the attitude instruments were faulty, but intermittently. So when it came time for retrofire, I had to cage those gyros and fly manually out the window attitudes that I thought were right. Pitch is no problem, that you can see that easily on the horizon. Roll doesn't enter into it, but yaw is very difficult to see without spending a lot of time tracking your progress. And I didn't do that. I was also probably would have done that had I not been so fascinated by the discovery that John Glenn's were not fireflies, but pieces of frost. That fascinated me. Major discovery, I thought. In any event, all of these things added to an overshoot. The retro rockets were not pointed in the right direction because I was not pointed in the right direction. I attribute that to instrument failure, and there is some disagreement about that.
Let me go back over one element of that you mentioned, that is the fireflies from John's flight, because we should explain more precisely what you mean. John saw something out the window. Would you explain?
Yeah. It's hard to realize that we didn't know for sure at that time whether or not there were living critters out there at 150 miles altitude, because John said they're fireflies. He called them that, and we really didn't know whether something like that existed. That's a good indicator of the state of our ignorance in many things at that time in the space program. Turned out, as I was stowing equipment, banging the hatch on the side of the capsule just before retrofire, the fireflies started flying past the window, and I could make more flyby by banging the hatch. And it was little pieces of frost